in terms of PowerPoint. And then after that, we'll kind of walk around the stage and add some hand motions and see how many people can remember from 25 years ago, Ken. This is not a test, no pressure, but maybe you should come down here and... Okay, all right, so here we go. By the way, a pretty good class. I stole that. I just want you to know. There's a church in Beaver Creek that I think it's a Vineyard church that says a pretty good church on their sign. I thought that's kind of funny. And they're not taking themselves too seriously, so we don't take ourselves too seriously here. It's not that great, but it's okay. It's a pretty good class. Okay. So, welcome to Old Testament literature, and here's what we're going to do. 4,000 years of the Old Testament story. I kind of hoped you would talk about the walkthrough, so here we go. So we got a key phrase or term for a couple of chapters, and then big ideas throughout the rest of the Old Testament. So the key phrase for chapter 1 is creation. Genesis chapter 2, special events of creation. Genesis chapter 3, the fall of Adam and Eve. Genesis chapter 4, Cain and Abel. Genesis chapter 5, look like very boring genealogies, but if you remember the class, they are filled with rich theological truth, as all the genealogies really are. Chapters 6, 7, and 8 are Noah and the flood. Chapter 9 is Noah after the flood. And chapter 10, just like chapter 5, genealogies. In chapter 11, we have the Tower of Babel, which is a real low point in the Old Testament, but the next big point is this, chapter 12, the call of Abraham. God calls Abraham out of a place called Ur. I always say, if you forget where it was, just say Ur, and you're right. Same old corny jokes for some of this stuff. Okay? So it's called Ur, and it is in the Fertile Crescent here, bounded by the mountains on the north, the desert on the south, and the ocean on the left. You can farm it, travel it, and move throughout it. And he says, go to a land I promise to give to you. And when he gets there, the land of Israel, he can't possess it unless he has children. Right? And so God says, I will give you a promised son. But the first one is not the son through whom the promises come. His name is Ishmael. The second one is, of course, the one. His name is Isaac. Isaac also has two sons. The first one is not the one through whom the promises come. The second one is, though. His name is Jacob. Jacob is very prolific, and Jacob has 12 sons, right? So after a while, after a couple of years, they go down to the land of Egypt, where they stay for 400, and towards the end of that time, they become enslaved. Of course, God raises up a leader named Moses, who says, let my people go. And do you remember the joke? Do you remember the joke? In perfect Hebrew, Pharaoh says, no way, Mose. Still works, still works. Boring as ever, but still works. Okay, no way. All right, not going to happen. So God brings 10 plagues on them. Moses leads them through the Red Sea and into the wilderness, where they get the bright idea of sending out 12 spies. Those 12 spies come back. 2 of them say yes. 10 of them, of course, say no. The people say no, and God says, no, you don't trust me, I don't trust you, and so you are going to die off over the next 40 years in this wilderness area. A picture from one of the various spots they probably were in. So you get a sense of the real absolute desolation of the wilderness and what it would have been like to live there for 40 years. So God raises up a new generation and a new leader named Joshua, who leads the people through the Jordan River and divides the land up into 12 sections. Now, this lasts for about 400 years. We're ruled by people called the Judges, and we have a series of social, economic, political, and spiritual ups and downs. People say, man, we're really tired of the instability. What we really need is a king. So God says, okay, you need a king. I'll give you a king. The first king's name has 1 syllable. The second king's name has 2 syllables. The third king's name has, see the pattern? No. 3 syllables. Again, it works. You remember it. This lasts for a couple hundred years, what we call the divided monarchy, until it is split in 2. It's not in half, but in 2. 10 tribes in the north, 2 in the south. Israel is the country. Judah is the country of the south. Samaria is the capital, and Jerusalem is the capital down here. So, at that point, after a couple hundred years of this, now the divided monarchy, the country of Assyria comes down in 722 to take away the northern 10 tribes. And so Shalmaneser III comes down, grabs those 10 tribes, carries them away into captivity, where I say, never be heard of again, sort of. sort of, because even though those were never heard of, some of their brethren had already traveled south to the southern two tribes, so we didn't really lose the 12 tribes of Israel. Then, in 586, King Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon comes around the Fertile Crescent, smashes the temple flat, grabs the 2 and the remnant of the 10, carries them back into captivity, where they stay for 70 years. This, of course, is the time of Daniel. And at the end of that time, God raises up again 2 leaders. The first one is priestly, and his name is Joshua. Of course, a very different Joshua than the previous guy. And then we have the royal leader, and I don't call him the king because he never does get to be king. He just has royal blood in his veins. His name is Zerubbabel. We love him for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's very theologically significant. Number 2, his name is just so much fun to say. And so Zerubbabel leads them back and rebuilds the temple out of all the, remember Zerubbabel? Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. So then, 7 years later, one of the shorter men in the Bible, not the shortest. There are 2 shorter men in the Bible than Nehemiah. You know who they are?
Bildad.
Bildad, the Shuhite, very good, Ken. You got the essence of the Old Testament. Right? Bildad, the Shuhite, is shorter than he, but there's one person maybe shorter than that. How's your Bible trivia going here? How's your corny Bible trivia going here?
Somebody slept on the watch.
Peter slept on his watch, so yeah, Peter was probably shorter. Yeah, very good. Okay. All right. Enough of that. All right. He rebuilds the wall. 7 years later, Messiah comes. 7 years later, he rebuilds the walls, and then 400 years later, Messiah comes. So there you have it. Okay. So here's what I want to do. Let's see if we can walk through it. Now, I want you to participate with the hand motions. Now, I'm not, for lack of time, I'm not going to go through this a separate time. We're just going to do it the first time, just once, and see how many people can remember the hand motions involved. And if this is your first time, you can just watch us all look kind of silly, but participate if you can, okay? So do what I do, and at least mimic me. Genesis chapter 1. Put your fingers up here. Genesis chapter 1 is the key word, creation. Genesis chapter 2, special events of creation. Genesis chapter 3, the fall of Adam and Eve. Genesis chapter 4, Cain and Abel. Chapter 5, genealogy. 6, 7, and 8, Noah and the flood. Genesis chapter 9, Noah after the flood. Chapter 10, genealogy. So if I do this like a 1 and a 1, like an 11, I'm also building the Tower of Babel. Very good. Chapter 12 is the call of, God calls Abraham out of Ur. Yeah, okay. It says, pack your bags and walk around the Fertile Crescent to the land which I promised to give to you. There he has 2 sons. The first one is not son of promise. His name is Ishmael. The second one is, his name is, very good. Isaac also has. The first one is not son of promise. His name is Esau. The second one is, his name is Jacob has 12 sons. Yeah, I'd have to add 2 ears and 10 fingers. Okay, it works. And they go down to the land of Egypt. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have explained to you. We're taking this map and putting it right down here, okay? So this is the Jordan River here, the Saudi Arabian desert here, the Tigris and Euphrates flow down there, and Ur is over there, and of course we got Egypt down here, and the Sinai Peninsula down in this spot, okay? Sorry, I take it for granted because they just know in this classroom that's what this is. This is Egypt right here. Looks like a table to you, but to me this is Egypt, okay? So they go down to Egypt and they stay for 400 years, and God raises up a leader named Moses. Goes to Pharaoh and says, Pharaoh says back to him, very good, yeah, that's good. You got the important part. So God brings 10 plagues. Moses leads them through the Red Sea and into the wilderness. Very good. This is where you get the bright idea of sending out 12 spies, 2 of which come back and say, yes. 10 would say, no. People say, no. God says, no. Right, you're going to die off over the next 44 years until God raises up a new leader named Joshua, leads them through the Jordan River, just like Moses had the Red Sea, divides the land up into little sections. Yeah, now we're ruled by people called the Judges. Lasts for 400 years. We have a series of ups and downs, social, economic, political, and spiritual to be exact. People say, we're tired of the instability. What we really need is a king, right? First king's name is and then very good. Solomon dies, and the whole thing is cut in 2, very good. Number of tribes in the north are 10, and the south are
2.
Capital in the north is,
Samaria.
and the south is,
Jerusalem.
the country up here is Israel, and down here is
Judah.
Very good. You guys are getting stronger the farther we go. That's good. Usually the class goes the other way, so great. This lasts for a couple hundred years until up in here, this country is now called Assyria. The year is 722. Shalmaneser III comes down and Tiglath-Pileser III, got the names mixed up, grabs the 10 northern tribes, carries away into captivity, never to be heard of again. Sort of, very good. Over here, this country is now called Babylon. The year is 586. Nebuchadnezzar comes around Fertile Crescent, smashes everything flat, especially the temple, grabs the 2, and the remnant of the 10, carries them back into captivity where they stay for 70 years. This is the time of Daniel. At the end of that time, God raises up 2 leaders. The first one is priestly. His name is Joshua. The second one is royal, and his name is Zerubbabel, who comes back and rebuilds the temple out of all the rubble. Very good. Then, 70 years later, God raises up Nehemiah, rebuilds all the walls. 400 years later, Messiah comes. Very good, very good. You guys are all right. That's good.